Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Kajaus. It's a privilege and an honor to be here this morning. As Dr. Kajaus previously mentioned, I'm an executive architect. I come out of the IBM Federal CTO office, where we go across a number of different industries and accounts, Department of Defense, the military intelligence, do law enforcement, State Department, DOJ, so a number of those. So what we'll be talking about encompasses some of those and goes beyond. I'm also an adjunct professor at Maryland, University of Maryland, University College, and I tend to use that not only to try and keep abreast of the technologies, but also to cherry pick, or I guess in IBM terms, recruit some of the better students, and that's probably why they allow me to continue teaching. Let me see, being both a professor and a consultant, I know you're afraid about how many charts I may have, but don't worry, I only have 5 charts, and 2 of those are blank charts. So this shouldn't really take too long. So just a little bit of background, just to provide a caveat, because I know that we are in a very multidisciplinary group here. I'm not a philosopher. If I were Plato, I'd be here talking about self-governance and sort of the actions and the cybernetics behind how to regulate what I'm doing. If I were Descartes, I'd talk about the value of informatica, in the data. He says, I think, therefore I am. And that was really the basis of his existentialism. And I'm not a psychologist either. If I were, I'd be here talking to you today about cognition, emotions, and conations, which I know is part of the theme that this conference has had over multiple years. What I truly am is a computer scientist of over 30 years. And at the end of the day, term used a number of times here, is computer science is about data processing. It's about the data, whether it's data that you get consciously, subconsciously, through a number of different senses, and it's about the actions that you take from that data. And really, in a sense, that is what data processing is, and that really is the crux of computer science. So with that in mind, Najib asked me to come in and talk today about the Smarter Planet. The Smarter Planet initiative is very large for IBM. You've probably seen some commercials, and I'll expand on that a little bit today. And it really is, it encompasses informatics because it's all about the tremendous amount of data that we have today. We've gone through various years in which we were talking about gigabytes. We've been talking about terabytes. I've been working for the last decade with customers that were dealing with petabytes of data. And today we're working with some customers that are talking about exabytes of data. That's 10 to the 15 zeros. That is a million times a billion data sets that individuals, that companies and organizations have to deal with today. And it's just it's a tremendous challenge, but it's also a tremendous capability that we have today that we didn't have in the past. So we really are making some tremendous leaps, technologically speaking. Computing-wise, today's supercomputer was just announced earlier this year, is 33.8 petaflops. It's just that's floating point operations per second. That's a tremendous computing calculation. IBM demonstrated about 10 or so years ago the ability to play chess with just terabytes of data. And just about a year or so ago, we demonstrated, or maybe almost 2 years ago, demonstrated the ability to come up with a system called Watson that really took that the next level, adding cognitive computing and natural language processing, things that, again, the AI world, the knowledge management world has been after for a very long time. So just tremendous capabilities. So again, my challenge here today was to talk about the Smarter Planet, how that works within the concept of informatica, cybernetics, but even more important, the social aspects of this theme. And so Smarter Planet, again, falls on that because it really provides tremendous value socially across the world, both things that we can do here and as well as what we can do internationally. So with that in mind, I'd like to share a small video with you all.
viveu muito. O Rio não está preparado.
One day we had a big flood. I was in office like for 1 year, and I said, okay, I'm going to start calling the radios and the TVs and telling people not to go to work today. I mean, who could tell I was right? I mean, that was my, my instinct. Then was the time that we said, okay, we got to get people together. We got to get people 24 hours a day. We got to have a special system, to do the forecast to see, I mean, is there going to be big rain? Is there going to be a big flood? So, I mean, that was the moment I called IBM,
The mayor decided to challenge IBM, and he said, look, I have a big problem. We had the rain in April, and I think that can happen again. And I need to be more coordinated. So we took our experience in other projects. We come with many global experts combined with the local people, and we start to develop this project.
We built the center in 6 months. Everybody said it would be impossible. We did it because we have a passion, we wanted to do it, and we knew that was something relevant and important for Rio.
It's the first complex cross-operation center in the world.
In English, it means high resolution weather prediction. That basically takes the information from the weather prediction, knows what is going to happen in the city in terms of rains, if they are strong or not, and then identify what are the potential points of floods in the city.
The center is designed to have tools for prediction, tools to handle, and the tools to analyze the lesson learned.
It can take, in the advance of 36 to 48 hours, prediction of where it's going to rain and how much is going to rain and how much is going to flood in advance.
Essa sensação de segurança, de saber que através das câmeras teve uma reação, os policiais puderam chegar, policial, bombeiro, sei lá, chegou muito rápido, isso é uma coisa muito boa.
It's not just focused on transit, not just focused on security, but we have here 32 agencies and services representative. Has the liaison from the operation center and the field teams.
Eu acordo, tomo café, durante esse café eu entro na internet e entro num site de previsão das ondas. The city also can help the citizen. They can receive information of the planned activities that the city is doing, or if there is a big event, they also can have the information about the traffic management. They can have the information about the weather and about the floods. The core is completely integrated to the citizen.
Com certeza, esses problemas de segurança, transporte, isso melhorou visivelmente de uns anos para cá.
Every day, 24 hours a day, we are working very hard to make life better to our citizens, to the Cariocas.
When I look to the future, think about Rio Plus 20 next year, if you think about the Confederations Cup, if you think about the World Cup, if you think about the Olympic Games, which is concentrated in our city, Rio is going to do things the way we always did. I mean, in a very nice way, in a very happy way, but now in a very professional way.
We have a goal to make Rio a really smart city. And we know that this is a process in the long run. We are just in the beginning. But this beginning was very important because we built the foundations that will lead us to the future.
When I met with IBM, I made the challenge and IBM accepted. And did a great job.
I'm a very fortunate guy because I think I was born in the most beautiful city in the world. Now, every day I wake up, I feel that I'm living in the city that has the best operational center in the world. That will make me very proud to be a Carioca.
So Brazil has been and continues to be just a tremendous customer. As an emerging country, I think they have many very interesting facets And one that I'd like to point out is that as you start looking at the smarter planet, one approach, and we call these entry points, one approach is to take a look at what infrastructure you have and what you can leverage and what you can build upon. Brazil, some of the emerging countries actually also have the ability to actually build new infrastructure. They're emerging. They may not have some of the roadways, the internets, the communications, and hence taking a look at what they can put into place that are smarter and allow you to do much more and more intelligently is a tremendous opportunity to emerging countries. Brazil was also, of course, very motivated, looking at the World Cup that we just saw in the last few weeks and at the upcoming Olympics. It wasn't just a requirement to make this a much smarter city. It was really essential. They needed to be able to manage all kinds of very dynamic happenings, public safety. It's a tremendous transformation that they have to go through. And again, they were just the perfect customer to work with. I'll say that in the royal sense, IBM, we have been doing this for several years now, probably pretty darn near 2,500 different engagements, smarter planet, smarter cities, and buildings worldwide. And I think this is one of our better stories. And again, it continues in preparation for the upcoming Olympics. So let me talk a bit about the genealogy of where Smarter Planet comes from before I start talking more about Smarter Planet. Smarter Planet came from something we developed almost about 12 years ago that we called Autonomic Computing. The notion of autonomic computing is that, like the body that deals with things autonomically, if you're walking upstairs, you don't think, you know what, I'd better raise my heart rate a little bit. I want to be able to pump some extra oxygen to my brain, to my legs, so that I can make it up the stairs. Those are things that we do autonomically. The body knows how to react. If you put your hands on fire, you don't say, darn, I think I'm burning my finger, I better retract that. You have a multitude of senses, and you have various ways that your body acts upon those data feeds, conscious, subconscious, and as we just stated, some of those autonomously. So the notion of autonomic computing was, how do we apply that to the very large systems? And so we said that the systems were self-configuring. Self-configuring meaning that the goal was to have increased responsiveness, to be able to adapt dynamically to changing environments in various settings. Autonomic computing is about self-optimizing. It's the ability to provide operational efficiencies and continuously optimize. It's tuning the resources and balancing the workloads to maximize the use of the resources that you have. It's also about self-healing. The notion of, from the systems perspective, business resiliency, to be able to diagnose, to be able to discover and act to prevent disruptions and other nefarious forces upon your system. And then finally, self-protecting, really the notion of being secure of the information and the resources to anticipate, detect, and recover from any attacks. Another aspect of autonomic computing is the notion that in traditional systems, you were dealing with all the system elements at the time. You would be looking at a server, you might be looking at storage, you might be looking at networks, and the notion of autonomic computing was, yes, the world had moved on to being able to deal with server farms, so that if one server went down, you might go to another server in that server farm. If you had a storage farm, you could go from one storage device to another. And we said, you know, that's just not enough, because at times, making some of those changes can affect a broader system that's using those resources. It can affect missions. It can affect the entire enterprise without taking that into consideration. So the notion was different levels of abstraction. We call that the being able to deal with an element one at a time. Then the second level of abstraction was being able to deal with multiple system elements within those so we call those inter-element interactions. And then finally, we have the much more intelligent perspective that said there are various levels of abstraction that you could take that says, how do these changes that I'm trying to make affect not only my system from the server's information and my multiple networks, et cetera, but how does it affect my enterprise, our mission, our business goals, as well as our bottom line with respect to costs and schedules, et cetera. So to get there, we devised something that we call the SMAPI. The SMAPI is really the innards, the intelligence behind autonomic computing. So at the bottom you'll see that it starts off with sensors. Sensors are things that are able to, in our case, detect challenges, but we also worked on having elements that, besides being able to sense and provide data, were intelligent enough to actually go back and be able to take commands to rectify some of those challenges. We go from the sensor to the monitoring, the ability to actually monitor for things and have rules for what to do when certain events occur. From that, beyond your traditional monitoring that said we have a fault here and let's go back and replace this, you have the notion of truly an analysis that took into consideration the other elements that we talked about, the other abstractions that we talked about, and made much more intelligent and conscious decisions. The P is for the planning. The planning said, this is what we anticipate is going to happen if we make these changes, and this is what we're going to go back and double check, make sure that happened. The execution then, the E, is actually being able to take control and either in some automated fashion make the calls to the system to correct what you're trying to correct, or to send a command to an individual or whatever other party to make those changes for the system. And then finally, the effectors were the part of the sensors that actually make those commands. You'll see in the middle that there's also a K. It's actually in your graph, I think it got so small it got lost, but really that was the knowledge base. The knowledge base is something that we continuously build on. The knowledge base is something that captures all of the events that occurred after you made the changes, and the knowledge system is what's going to go back and it's going to be checked against by the system that checks whether or not the change that you made had the effect that you expected it to have. I'm oversimplifying things here because this whole SMAPI is hierarchical in nature. You can actually start embedding, and actually it also works in an embedded approach. So you can actually have different levels of MAPCs for different sets of actions and atomic activities that you'll be doing. So you'll note from that that seems very similar to what you saw in the graphics, and that's really from the systems perspective. So I contend that autonomic computing was in fact, which is really enterprise systems on storage, it's a predecessor to IBM's very successful Smarter Planet initiative. I should take note, I'm not an attorney either, by the way, that this is my stance. This is not IBM's official statement that this is a predecessor. There, I can point to probably several IP from both from IBM and from industry that got us to where this is, but you can certainly see the concepts carrying over into the smarter world. So onto a smarter planet. Whereas autonomic computing focused on system elements, storage and servers, et cetera, what Smarter Planet does is to take that a step beyond, just truly look at anything worldwide that has a sensor. So sensors like a utility meter, looking at a pressure sensor on a bridge or on a water dam, something as simple as a traffic camera, or maybe mobile phones from individuals, whether they're being active or passive. Active, meaning that individuals are actually blogging about something, texting, and something you can capture and use, or something that is passive, GPS and allowing tracking, allowing different things to be made aware for the system to leverage in the future. And we even have some passive microchips in bodies, in humans and in animals, that also collect information that can be extracted and can actually be used to make better decisions and in a smarter planet in many ways. So as you'll note at the right hand of the chart, Smarter Planet has really three tenets. The first tenet is instrumented. So the key to instrumented here is that you actually have some sort of a sensor, whether it's on a bridge, on a road, on a dam, in a building somewhere, something that will provide information, informatica, right? The second notion is being interconnected. And interconnected has many different aspects to it. Clearly, you want to be able to have some sort of a connection from that sensor either directly through the internet to that brain for the smarter planet, or you want that interconnected to go through some computer hub that can then be connected and provide the information to the mastermind in the back. Interconnected has a few other challenges when you get down to it, because many of these sensors might be working on very proprietary interfaces. Some of these might only be an analog. Let's think about a meter in your house. Most of these things are analog. So if you really wanted to gather that information, you have to digitize it, and then you have to put it into some network to bring that back to the master mind. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, the other aspect of being interconnected is really the ability to not only provide information, but to be able to provide commands back to that sensor to act accordingly and to make some of the changes that need to be done as dynamically as possible. And then finally, the third tenet is intelligent. And intelligence is a very broad term, and really this is what we feel is our major capability that we bring to the table. Really the notion of bringing all kinds of advanced analytics and the ability to manage all kinds of information, structured and unstructured data. We're dealing with a multitude of multimedia, whether that's video, audio, imagery, or some of these very proprietary machinery interfaces that you'd make a lot of decisions about for the smarter planet. Am I doing on time? Okay, so the smarter planet then really has many focus areas as you look at some of the figures above. We've done a number of smarter energies, really the ability to get it there into a lot of companies and do what the ESCOs are doing today, right? The energy service companies. They will actually walk into a government agency or to a large industry and say, listen, I know you're spending about $1 million a year in your heating and air, and we can help you do that more intelligent. And we're so certain that we can help you make more intelligent decisions that we're willing to take your $1 million a year budget that you have, that you spent the last couple of years on energies, and we'll drop that by 10% for you. We're confident that you'll only pay 10%, 90% of what you paid last year, and if you end up spending more, we'll take that bite ourselves. We'll pay for it. We're so confident we're going to be able to save down to 20 that's going to be the way we get paid. We're not going to ask you to. We're not going to charge you to do this. And by the way, I'm talking about ESCOs, not IBM. The ESCO says I will. I'm so confident I'm going to be able to make intelligent decisions. Simple things like if the air conditioning is on over here and the heater is on in the room next door, let's actually start calibrating those so that one doesn't start defeating the other. And there are many other examples. But the notion here is that smarter energy was a clear initial driver here. Smarter buildings. If you extend that notion of having a smarter data center, having smarter energies, now you start looking at smarter buildings. How do I actually start tying all those decisions into physical security, into some of the other utilities in the building, and some of the other aspects of buildings. And so you start seeing how we're building, right? We build that now from smarter buildings to a smarter city that can extend all these buildings into a smarter transportation, smarter public safety, and smarter infrastructure all around the city. And you have examples with smart supply chains. You have smarter weather, as one of the examples was from Brazil, and a number of different aspects of the city that can really be brought in an atomic. I worked on a project out in Istanbul, Turkey, and they were integrating 40-some different different organizations, from first responders to the fire department to hospitals, putting them all into a common data center so that they could actually start interworking and becoming a much more intelligent municipality. And from there, then you build and eventually get to this notion of a smarter planet that you can go beyond your city, into your countries, and across the world. Thank you, sir. Gotcha. Okay, so smarter planet innards. As my colleague Lee Angelelli, who's going to have a presentation earlier today, will do, he'll talk more about. We have a paper that will be presented tomorrow. It's smarter. It's actually cognitive computing, a step towards tacit knowledge. So I'm not going to steal any of his thunder and talk about the variety of analytics that we're using today, but it suffices to say that we have a tremendous amount of analytics. Analytics that go anywhere from analyzing all the different types of data that we talked about, structured, unstructured, and so on, all the way to actually being able to correlate all of those related terms, information, and sensors from very different perspectives. And then finally, the ability to actually apply advanced predictive modeling and discovery techniques. So it's not just putting things into the models that we understand today, but actually to apply stochastic analyses, affinity analyses to discover new aggregations, new relationships that you may not have known. Some of those are statistical and don't matter to most of us, but some of those are really aha moments that say, you know what, I never thought about adding that new attribute and getting this new predictive model out of all this. So I think, being given, I think I have time for just one more.
For the first time ever, most people live in urban areas. As these populations grow, they place increasing demand on city leaders. Despite challenges, leaders must find innovative ways to collaborate and engage with businesses and citizens, and turn problems into opportunities. In order to meet and exceed citizen expectations, city leaders rely on key partnerships with businesses and agencies to align resources and deliver smarter solutions in planning and management, human services, and infrastructure. So when the city wins a bid to host the National Football Cup, they'll need a solution that will give city executives insight into critical pressing issues, so they can be confident that event preparation goals are met while citizen needs are addressed. The IBM Intelligent Operations Center for Smarter Cities empowers city management with a holistic view of operations across all agencies and interconnects cities and their partner organizations to increase operational efficiencies and enhance the effectiveness of service delivery. With integrated insight across departments and agencies, leaders can leverage information for better decision-making, anticipate critical issues and resolve them proactively, and coordinate resources and processes for more efficient operations. The Intelligent Operations Center provides a simplified view of city operations. It provides historical reports for management reporting and trend analysis, as well as situational awareness to connect distributed data sources and visualize patterns over time to ensure that resources are optimized for current and future issues. Near real-time key performance indicators help monitor and optimize the performance of city services, personnel, and programs. And multi-stakeholder inclusion enables city leaders to collaborate with agencies, businesses, and citizens to ensure that the event runs smoothly and that citizen needs are met. With mobile capabilities, the Intelligent Operations Center Executive Dashboard empowers busy leaders to have immediate access to information about relevant issues and operations, wherever they are. Now, as visitors flood the city, citizens begin to express frustration about event-related issues, like traffic delays. The city responds quickly by creating special event routes from major hotels to the stadium and rerouting native traffic. City officials broadcast citywide messages, alerting citizens to new traffic routes to help accommodate event delays. They can also update stakeholders on detour plans and other event preparation details via instant message. Through the Intelligent Operations Center for Citizen Collaboration, citizens can work with the city to report issues and their eventual resolution. On opening day of the event, a team bus backs into a fire hydrant, forcing it out of service. Citizens report the broken hydrant via mobile device, and the information is logged within the Intelligent Operations Center. That night, after a come-from-behind win at the event's main match, emergency responders receive reports from citizens that fans have lit several fires outside the stadium. The Intelligent Operations Center for Emergency Response is equipped with standard operating procedures for rapid response to emergencies, including extreme weather, crowd management, and fire. Via computer-aided dispatch, the Intelligent Operations Center automatically updates the fire department that the closest fire hydrant is out of commission. With this new information, fire responders are equipped with an extra-long hose and water truck to quickly extinguish the blazes. The city analyzes surveillance camera feeds to assist law enforcement in apprehending the responsible parties. Overall, the National Football Cup is a success. Before the event, city leaders deployed a survey via social media to collect ideas from citizens for repurposing the custom-built stadium. Now they analyze that feedback and announce a plan to repurpose the stadium as a venue for community programs for at-risk kids. The city's responsiveness results in a significant increase in sports program participation and a swell in community pride and positive identity. By empowering city leaders to collaborate and engage with citizens and businesses, and interconnect across systems, the IBM Intelligent Operations Center can help cities provide sustainable economic growth and enhanced quality of life, helping support smarter cities all over the world. Let's build a smarter planet, city by city.
So there you have it. Really, what this is trying to explain is that this thing that we call the IOC is the heart of a smarter planet. You can have that at various levels of abstraction. You can have that managing different parts of that infrastructure and actually dealing with a much higher level IOC up at top. Just on a side note, we did something very similar out in London. London actually has a challenge in the number of cars and the traffic, and in order to help manage that, we actually put in a system with London. One of the key aspects of the system was that they wanted to be able to see who was actually coming into the city that didn't live in the city and didn't need to, that could instead be using rail and the metro, what they call the tube. And so we actually then applied, since they have this notion of a CCTV, they have everything in London is connected through cameras. We actually then looked at all of those cameras and were able to read, using OCR on video, the plates and see if that plate is registered inside or outside of the city. And those folks would be taxed or fined heavier if they're using the city rather than using the metro. So that just adds again to the city public service, lowering the traffic challenges and increasing the revenue of some laws that they had in place but were never able to enforce. So with that, I've left you some of my contact info in case you want to reach me a little bit later. I've put in the YouTube for some of the videos. I thank you for being such a great audience. I'm going to apologize because I'm going to have to leave tomorrow midday, but I'm here the rest of the day and early tomorrow in case you want to talk about any of this. And with that, thank you very much.